Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. I think I've finally got the taxes sorted. It was even more of a mess than I expected, and I can't say I'm happy with the result. Yang's tax reforms are sounding better than ever right about now. But it's done, and we can get back to the news. Let's get into it. First off, a hearty thank you to everyone who participated in Saturday's People's March. We had a number of groups across the country picket their representatives' houses, and some of them met with success. Congresswoman Marcia Fudge and Senator Sherrod Brown in Ohio both endorsed the people's stimulus demands. Income Movement also delivered thousands of letters directly to Senator Schumer, and David Kim joined the picket outside Gomez's house, which is just to name a few. Speaking of Income Movement, they are starting a new hashtag #MyCovidCashStory for use with everyone's personal account of why they need direct economic stimulus. Tag your representatives, especially your senator, and help them understand how real this crisis is. And we need the next stimulus to be for the people. As Matt pointed out yesterday, if all the stimulus money had gone to citizens so far, instead of corporations, everyone would have gotten over $20,000. Makes that $1,200 seem a bit paltry, doesn't it? But there's more great news. Massachusetts' ballot initiative for ranked choice voting has succeeded. Get ready to vote for voting on November 3rd, because it'll be there. I want to point out a candidate for Congress that hasn't yet been endorsed by Humanity Forward, but who supports UBI, and that is Alex de Blasi for Oregon's 3rd District. He has a lot of positions and policies. The ones immediately relevant to us are UBI, M4A, Green New Deal, legalizing weed, and decriminalizing all other drugs. Worth looking into. A new study by cognitive psychologists sought to determine why some people follow social distancing and other pandemic guidelines and others do not. I think we're all too familiar with the political undertones of the divergence, but the study found a peculiar correlation with working memory. Working memory is the ability to hold multiple potentially conflicting ideas in one's mind. It's a subset of short-term memory associated with one's ability for reasoning and decision-making, and the study found a strong correlation between this attribute and compliance with the guidelines. Now, it's not too surprising that those with superior decision-making skills would be more likely to abide the regulations, but it does remind one of the functional IQ drop observed in those who are under financial stress. This is yet another argument for why we need UBI, as UBI has been observed to increase functional IQ, and functional IQ is now clearly linked to compliance with measures that will mitigate the pandemic. It's fair to say that UBI would increase compliance, reducing the damage from COVID, in addition to supporting the economy and people through the economic crisis. That said, I also want to point out that people aren't rebelling against the lockdowns because they're stupid. Not all of them, anyway. Anyone characterizing it that way is playing into the same tribalism that they likely accuse the protesters of. It's setting up a straw man for Republicans the same way that Republicans do for the Floyd protests, pretending that they're all looters, rioters, Antifa, opportunists, etc. Many have good reasons for protesting the lockdowns, whether because they aren't getting UI, or their business is going under, or they object to an infringement of constitutional liberty. There's also blame now going around about who caused the resurgence of the pandemic. Republicans are blaming Floyd protesters. Democrats are blaming the early reopenings. If we want to be effective and rational, it's important that we not fall into tribalism. I was sympathetic to protests over the lockdowns as we did not provide the UBI needed to make them reasonable. I'm also sympathetic to the Floyd protests as there is no better opportunity than now when people have the time and the impetus to truly advance civil rights. Opportunities don't often come at opportune moments. Life is sloppy and you have to make hard decisions. Certainly the Floyd protests have not helped with the pandemic, but if they were solely to blame, we'd see resurgence everywhere, as the protests were everywhere. But even huge cities like Seattle and New York are not part of the resurgence, despite having the biggest protests. It's the southern states that reopened early and are lax on social distancing and masks that are bearing the brunt of it. The point of all of this is that fully taking one side does not convince anyone, it just further entrenches the opposition. If we're to follow the principles of humanity first and pragmatic problem solving, We must be the exceptions that show both tribes that there is common ground in the middle. There is room for not just compromise, but consensus. The fact of the matter is, neither of those protests would be necessary if Congress were serving the people. If we had a government that looks out for us instead of corporations, we'd have a UBI, police reform, and much more besides to address the issues that are driving these protests. We need to focus people on the necessary reforms that the vast majority can agree on. And as a wise trucker once said of Yang, that begins with understanding first and being understood second. In other words, if you want to convince someone, start by understanding their perspective. This is more important now than ever as the pandemic continues to grow to record heights in the US, with new cases in Florida up to 15,000 now, outpacing all but 4 countries of the world, and one of those is of course the United States. Unreal. For reference, in the UK, Japan, Germany, and South Korea, whose combined population roughly equals the US, they had a combined new caseload yesterday of 1,500. Here, the caseload was 62,000. Eric Garcetti, mayor of LA, made a great showing for Mayors for AGI yesterday when he explained on national TV that politicians shouldn't be deciding what people need and micromanaging financial aid. He pointed out that everyone's circumstances are different and we should just give money and let the people address their own needs, which they know better than any bureaucrat ever can. Props to you, Eric. You totally get it. Mayor Tubbs, on the other hand, also gave a soundbite on the difference between UBI and the mayor's guaranteed income, and his answer was far less encouraging. He called the differences semantics. It's clear that he still doesn't understand the importance of unconditionality. He still believes that attempting to target only the needy makes sense when the data clearly shows that universality is the only way to reach all those in need. This is why we need to help educate them on this issue, gang. It should be noted that Tubbs did say this was just a first step and that he hopes to expand it to a universal program as soon as possible. In an impressive display of dirty politics, Jen Perelman's incumbent opponent, Debbie Schultz, bought the internet domains jenperelman.com and jenperelmanforcongress.com to prevent her using them and to funnel people who are looking to support Jen toward Debbie's site instead. Jen is taking it in stride, however, accepting it as evidence that her privileged incumbent opponent is sweating the competition. Jen's actual website, by the way, is jen2020.com, much more succinct and attractive in my opinion. Consider visiting it and supporting her. We're now on the final day before Donna Imam's election, which is July 14th. If you can spend a bit of time on the phones for her, now's the time. Finally, I wanted to spread a simple message Yang shared today on Twitter, one which you've no doubt heard before but bears repeating. Quote, control what you can control, which starts with yourself. End quote. Any cognitive psychologist will tell you that this is the key to mental health, and anyone who's accomplished anything great will tell you it's also the key to success. Greatness starts within yourself. People drive themselves crazy trying to control other people or situations that they simply can't. Unrealistic expectations always lead to frustration. Act on what you can control. Do what you can to make the world a better place. If it doesn't work, that's not on you. Focus on what you can do and take pride in your efforts. Sometimes it turns out you had more effect than you'd think. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Tweet your hashtag MyCovidCashStory to your senator. Check out Alex de Blasi. Consider supporting Donna and Jen. Tell Tubbs why universality is more than semantics. Take Yang's advice to heart. Help support clear, fundamental policy goals for the protests. Visit bailoutthepeople.com to take action. Help recruit other organizations to the cause and get everyone to sign the UBI petitions. Flood Congress and Trump with calls, tweets, and letters using the ResistBot or Income Movement easy contacts below. If you need financial help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, United Way, or the H3 podcast thread. And don't forget to Yang Daily.